Everybody's got a price. Everybody's gonna pay.
Hey, welcome to Guatney Unplugged. Hope you're having a great Saturday. It's so strange life the way it works. We have talked about 80s wrestling on this show I don't know how many times, and today we're actually going to talk to one of the superstars of 80s wrestling, Ted DiBiase. He, of course, is the $1 Million Man, one of the best technical wrestlers and greatest villains in pro wrestling history of all time. He's also in several halls of fame. You can meet him today in Jacksonville at Mopar Mania. A meet and greet, MacArthur Church, that's at 3501 John Hardin Drive in Jacksonville, Arkansas. He's going to sign autographs from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. today. How are you, Ted?
I am doing good. You might say I feel like $1 million.
You might say that. It's so great to talk to you. You know, I was looking through your history. I remember growing up watching you. You are within a month of my dad's age.
Wow.
You grew up there in Nebraska. What is your memories of the first time you were exposed to wrestling?
Well, I was exposed to wrestling because my father, before me, his name was Mike DiBiase. His wrestling name was Iron Mike DiBiase. And my dad was not only a professional wrestler, but in 1946, he was the AAU National Heavyweight Amateur Wrestling Champion. And I think he was still in the Navy at the time. And of course, he was from Omaha, Nebraska. When he got out of the Navy, he went back and went to school, went to Nebraska, and he lettered at Nebraska 8 times, 4 years in wrestling and 4 years in football. And I mean, that was my hero, and I wanted to be just like him. And you know, my first memories of Little Rock, we actually there was a time there when Little Rock, I don't know if it was part of, ultimately Little Rock ended up being part of what they considered the Oklahoma territory, and. But I can remember we lived in a house. We rented a house in Little Rock, and all I can remember is that had this huge yard. Back then, pro wrestlers, they moved around a lot. I'm almost like gypsies because they would go territory to territory, and it's kind of like, especially if you were a bad guy. And my dad was always, like you would have your run with the top good guy. And however long that run lasts, and then you leave and you go somewhere else, and they bring in a new villain for the good guy.
I remember a guy in Little Rock named Magnum TA. I don't know anything about him. I know he was wrestling. Does that even sound familiar?
Oh yeah, I know Magnum. I know him well. God bless him, man. He ended up having an accident. And, he's been wheelchair bound ever since.
Wow. I did not know that. I didn't know what happened to him. Now, what was it like? Because I think like Terry Funk had some hand in training you coming up. Is that right?
In a roundabout way, yes. My dad and Dory Funk Sr., his father, were very good friends. And Dory Funk Senior ended up he was kind of like ended up being the owner of what was considered the Amarillo territory.
Right.
The Amarillo territory. You talk about a big territory. It was like on Saturday we do our TV, and you would either go to the short trip was 30 miles to Hereford. The long trip might be to Colorado Springs or Pueblo, Colorado. Which was one was 300, the other was 350. Then from there, whether you were in Hereford or you were in Colorado, everybody drove to Albuquerque, and Albuquerque was Sunday night. And from Albuquerque back to Amarillo, Sunday night is another 300 miles.
Oh my gosh.
And so then on Monday, we would drive, whatever it is, 260 or something down to Abilene. We'd wrestle in Abilene on Monday night. Then we would drive over to Odessa and we would wrestle in Odessa on Tuesday night. And then Wednesday, we would drop down from Odessa to San Angelo and wrestle in San Angelo on Wednesday night. And then from San Angelo, drive all the way back to Amarillo and wrestle in Amarillo on Thursday night. And then we wrestle in Lubbock on Friday night and then start all over. Brother, if I had been paid by the mile,
sure,
I would be a multi-million-dollar man. You talk about wearing out a car too. I mean, that's the other thing. We were, like we weren't part of like the NFL where everything's furnished for you.
Sure.
You drove your own car, you paid for your own hotels, food, and all that stuff.
And you were just never at home.
Yeah. Oh yeah, constantly on the road.
I mean, it's like a rock star life,
Oh yeah, really. I mean, just and this I mean this sincerely. There were days when I would wake up in a hotel room and I'd look out I'd either look at the nameplate on the phone or look out the window and say, where the heck am I?
Yeah, it just all runs together. So when you were part of the Mid-South deal and the territories were so big, I guess it's cable TV that really kind of destroyed that. What did you see that coming, or was that an overnight surprise to you?
I don't think any of us saw it coming. But the promoter of Mid-South, Cowboy Bill Watts. Now, originally he went into a partnership with Leroy McGurk, who had been the owner and operator of that territory for a long time. And then Bill bought Leroy out, and it was all Bill. Bill is an extremely intelligent guy. And again, he's a guy, he played football and graduated from the University of Oklahoma. And his knowledge and understanding of the psychology of professional wrestling is just unbelievable. That's why I kept going back to Mid-South, because it was always good in terms of the territory, but it was huge. I mean, you talk about now, and some of these things would change periodically, but like, for example, we would do our TVs on usually on a Saturday morning. I had an apartment in Baton Rouge. Monday night, we would wrestle in New Orleans. Okay, that's easy, 80 miles.
Sure.
Tuesday night, we would wrestle in Baton Rouge. That's another easy, we're there. But then Wednesday morning, we would get up and we would drive 240 miles to Shreveport just to do the promos for the show that was going to be seen. I mean, the TV show had already been taped, but we would go there and just do the interviews for all the matches for the upcoming week. And so then after we did that, about noon, and then we would leave, and then we would drive 200 miles to Jackson, Mississippi, wrestle in Jackson on Wednesday night. And then sometimes we would, on Thursday, sometimes we stay over in Jackson. On Thursday, we would go up to either Greenwood or Greenville, Mississippi, and wrestle there. And then from Greenwood or Greenville, drive all the way back down to Baton Rouge.
That's unbelievable.
Unbelievable. And then I guess and Friday night, was kind of, you never knew. You might be in there's this little town called Oranger and or Houma, Louisiana, or Alexandria, any one of those towns. But I mean, every day. If I'd been paid by the mile, I would be one. I really would be I'd be the $1 billion man.
Yeah, the $1 billion man. I want to ask you, like, you start with WWF like in 79, and you were like one of the very first champions. How amazing was that?
Yes. And, when I went up there, I was I think when I first went there, they called it the North American Heavyweight Championship.
Right. That's right.
Okay. Well, then I talked to Vince McMahon Sr., who was still the boss the first time I went up there. And I told him that in Mid-South, that Cowboy Bill Watts' champion was also called the North American Champion. So when I was leaving, I dropped the North American title. Anyway, they changed the name of the title to the Intercontinental Championship. So what was the North American title became the Intercontinental Champion. So they wouldn't step on anybody's toes.
I got you. Then of course the names change over the years and all that kind of good stuff. You're known as one of the great villains, but didn't you wrestle as a good guy, as a baby face for a minute before that kind of took off? And which one's more fun to play?
Oh yeah, well yeah, I was what we call wrestling a baby face, a good guy when I first started, and again I started for Bill Watts in Mid-South, and I didn't turn heel, and I'm trying to think I can't remember what year it was, but I had developed a great relationship with a guy. His real name was Sylvester Ritter. His wrestling name was the Junkyard Dog.
Yep.
And JYD, and again, to Bill Watts' credit, Bill Watts is the first wrestling promoter to ever feature as one of his top stars a black guy. And I mean it. The JYD was over. He was so hot.
Oh, yeah.
There's a chant they do down in New Orleans. It's like they go, "Who dat? Who dat?
Yeah.
Who dat?" Say they're going to beat them Saints. That was the shout for the New Orleans Saints. But then they started singing, "Who dat? Who dat? Who dat say they're going to beat that dog? Who dat?"
He'd have a big chain around his neck, it seems like.
Oh, yeah. Now, and I mean, he was so over. I mean, he was probably one of the most popular guys. If you would ask me today, there's not a New Orleans Saint football player or anybody. Junkyard Dog was the most popular guy going, and he and I were very good friends. We developed a great relationship, and then when I turned heel, well, who do I turn on? I turned on JYD. And I said, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to tell you something." I told, I don't know if you guys remember a guy named Grizzly Smith, but Grizzly was like Bill Watts's agent. He was the guy that showed up at all the towns, told all the guys what they were going to do, and if they need an advance on their money, that he would give them a couple $100. But then he told everybody what they were going to do. So, and I told him, I said, Grizz, I said, when I wrestled JYD the first time in New Orleans, I'm not driving my car. He said, "Why?" I said, "Because I might not have a car when I come out." And he said, "Okay, you can ride with me because I'm neutral." So I rode with him. JYD and I go out there, and we did the deal where I beat the tar out of him, but then at the very end, he beats the tar out of me, but then I find a way to beat him and cheat, and so that's because we're going to come back next week and do it again.
Sure.
Anyway, so we go in the dressing room, and I'm showered, and I come out, and when I come out and I'm getting dressed, old Grizz walks in the room, got his hands on his hips, and looking at me and just shaking his head, because I asked him if it would be okay to ride with him, because
sure.
And so I said, "You're new." He said, "Ride with me, I'm neutral." And so he just shaking his head, and I said, "Something wrong with the match, Grizz?" He said, "No." I said, "So what's wrong?" He said, "They slit my tires."
Oh,
all my tires. I mean, here's the guy he wasn't even wrestling, but just because I rode with him, they slit all of his tires. And I mean, the wrestling fans took the wrestling pretty serious back then.
Junkyard Dog was your best man at your wedding, I've read.
That is correct. Absolutely. Oh. He was a great guy. And to this day, I miss him. The thing about, it's like I try to tutor or coach young guys that are getting into the business.
Oh, yeah.
And I've seen guys go in the ring and mechanically everything they do looks okay and looks good. And I said, but here's the difference. I said, you take a guy like Junkyard Dog, you give him a microphone. Oh my gosh. I said, he had so much charisma. And it's like, I don't even know how to describe that word. It's we call it the it factor. You either have it or you don't.
That's right.
But I mean, you can be the greatest technical wrestler or football player or actor or whatever. But if you don't have the charisma, you got nothing.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's been guys that were great stars because of what they could do on the microphone. They really weren't that very good at wrestling.
Absolutely. And that was JYD. He was great on the microphone. I remember one time he was cutting an interview on me. And of course, I've got a big head. I always get teased about it. He said, DiBiase, he said, you can't come like a cabbage, all head, no rear. You got to bring some to get some.
We lost him way too soon. I think he was like 45. Yeah. We lost him in a car crash or something.
Yeah, he had driven back to the Carolinas where his ex-wife and his daughter lived, and had visited them, and he was driving back, and somewhere between Meridian and Jackson, I guess they think he just fell asleep at the wheel and ran off and hit a tree and killed him.
Gosh, it's just
terrible. way too soon. Because, I mean, if there was one thing that he had so much charisma. It was just unreal.
Oh, yeah. I remember. He was one of my favorites as a kid. What's it like, Ted, when you go to Walmart and you are an action figure in the toy aisle? How does that strike you?
Well, I want to tell you, the first time that happened to me, I was like really shocked. That actually I was, I'm 70 years old now, and I've got 4 grandkids. And I think I had one of my grandsons with me, and of course they always want to run to the toy aisle and everything.
There's Pawpaw in the little package.
They call me. Everybody calls me Big.
Yeah.
They just call me Big. They go, Big, come over here, Big. You got to see this. And I was like, wow, I couldn't believe it. It's kind of a surreal thing to know that you've done something that merits getting a toy made after you. So now they keep making that stuff. Now they call them Funko Pops.
Yeah, they got those, but they have those classic WWF figures as well. They do. That's really cool because it's retro. It looks like it would have been on the shelf in the 80s. You were one of the first, I think, to wrestle Hulk Hogan in Madison Square Garden. How did that come about? What's your memories of that?
Well, my first trip to New York, I didn't stay that long. And the first time I went up to New York, Vince McMahon Sr. was still alive and was still the boss. And Junior was there, but Junior was like he was the guy with the microphone. He was the guy that interviewed everybody, and he wasn't the ring announcer, but he interviewed everybody. So anyway, it's like I was there for maybe 9 months. I don't even think I spent a whole year there. Because I had the opportunity to go back to work for Bill. And quite frankly, you make big money in New York on the big shows. And if you're not one of, and again, I was just, I was still a young guy in the business. And so Vince Sr. comes to me, and this is it. I'm going to wrestle in the Garden that night, and that's my last appearance in the WWF until I came back in '87 for Vince Jr. And so Vince says, Ted, we got this new guy, and we got high hopes for him, and we're going to make him a big star. He says, I'd like for you to really get him over. And I said, you got it, no problem. And so, traditionally the bad guys are the guys who call the match in the ring. And they kind of direct traffic, so to speak. And so, I gave the Hulkster, a great match. Got good heat on him to where the people wanted to see him kill me, and he makes a big comeback on me and beats me 1, 2, 3. And when I got in the back of that, and it was at Madison Square Garden, it was Hulk's first appearance in Madison Square Garden, and my last appearance for that run. And so we got in the back, and Vince Senior was just thrilled, and the Hulkster come up to me and he said, "Brother, thank you so much." He says, "Mark my word," he says, "I just remember I owe you one." And so years later, I mean, he goes on and he becomes this huge star.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, I mean, they made everything into Hulk Hogan, like dogs and all kinds of stuff.
All of it, yeah.
and so then when I went back, to New York again, and this is like in '87, and he was still the guy, right?
Yep.
And I was coming in as like a fresh new heel, and the first night I saw him in the dressing room, he walked up to me, shook my hand, and he says, "It's payback time, buddy." He didn't forget, and so, I had a great run with him, and it's, to kick off your tenure in the WWF as being the top heel with the top guy, that's pretty good.
Well, I mean, you're kind of known for helping these guys get your start. I mean, you kind of helped The Undertaker and Stone Cold and all that kind of grow to what it was. I mean, what an honor really to be that guy, Yeah,
it really is. And, I don't know about Undertaker so much. I mean, I remember when I first met him and everything. But yeah, the story about the Undertaker, and I did this big deal with him for the Madison Square Garden, and it just got over, and he got over. And again, like Stone Cold. I mean, they call it in our business, they call it the rub. In other words, when there's a new guy coming in, and you really want to get him over, and you want to let the people know that this guy's up and coming, more or less, whether they realize it or not, is you put them with somebody that's already there.
Yeah, that's
right. Already, and like, so it's kind of like when I first went back to New York as the $1 Million Man, they put me with the biggest guy there, Andre the Giant. Yeah.
Was his heart as big as everyone, feels it to be? I mean, what was he like? I mean, what an awesome guy.
He was a great guy. He really was. He was pretty, I mean, for a guy that size and everything. And I thank God that he was soft-spoken and a nice guy, that you wouldn't want a guy that big to do a bully.
Oh, no. Of course, he was in movies and stuff like that. Did you ever kind of get approached to go in that direction, the Hollywood direction?
Not really. I didn't. Again, I was raised in wrestling. I loved wrestling. It's kind of like I tell everybody, I said, a lot of people get up and go to work every day because they have to. I got up and went to work every day because I loved it.
And that makes all the difference. You never work a day in your life.
Yeah, that's right. And so it was great. And then I went to Atlanta. The first time I went to Atlanta, Atlanta was the first place where there was national TV, and it was in the Superstation, Ted Turner's Superstation.
That's right.
And Georgia Championship Wrestling was on that channel, and so that was the first national exposure that I ever had. But that's why I went there. And the territory was not, and the other thing about it was, what was unique about it was, even though I wrestled every night, I came back to my apartment every night.
Oh, that'd be nice.
I mean, on the trips, you came back, but because other territories, oh gosh, we gotta go from here to Colorado, and then down to Albuquerque, and we got to spend the night there, and then anyway.
I would think that would have been a problem. You're staying in a local hotel. All the fans probably hounding you or tracking down y'all's hotel. I mean, was that an issue?
Not really. Not back then. Now, when it got to be the WWF, and you're coming to town, that's a different story. and there were fans who'd find out, and come to the lobby and hang out. But the fans were pretty good. I mean, they, and it's kind of like I was the heel, so
Yeah.
uh, I would, if I was like getting out of my car and walking into the building to wrestle,
Mhm.
I just ignored the fans, and they would, holler and cuss at me and everything else. And coming out of the building, but when I got back to the hotel, I just relaxed. And, if a young kid came up and wanted my autograph, I was more than happy, like in the airports and stuff like that. But just going to and from, I was a heel.
Well, you played the character. That's what they wanted anyway. Was the character,
Well, and that's and in Vince's words, he says, we're going to try to make the public believe you're really this guy. And when I asked him, well, how are you going to do that? He says, well, we're going to fly you everywhere first class. Not everybody flew first class. Like Andre and Hulk Hogan were the other two guys that flew first class back then. And he says, you're going to have limousine service in every town, airport to hotel to the show, from the show back to the hotel back to the airport. And everywhere people see you, they're going to see the appearance well. And then he topped that by saying, and as we go, we're gonna try to make it reality for you.
We were talking about how Vince wanted the character of the $1 Million Man to be larger than life and for it to be real and for the character to be real. Did they really give you petty cash to spend on ludicrous stuff in the public to help that persona?
Yeah, I mean,
they really did.
The day I signed the contract with Vince, he had one of his secretaries come out, and she counted out $2,000 in brand new $100 bills. And Vince says, "Take this. This is your flash cash." And he says, and he says, obviously you don't want to bully anybody or anything, but you just, wherever it might be, in a restaurant or whatever, you stand up and announce yourself. Hey folks, I'm DiBiase. I'm the $1 Million Man, World Wrestling Federation, and this is your lucky day because I'm picking up your check. And of course, I had Virgil back then, and so Virgil was like my valet, and he told Virgil, we're paying you to basically be his valet. You open the car door, you carry the bags and all that stuff, and he was well paid for it. So. So I would do that. I would have Virgil go around and get everybody's order, and of course then I would count out the $100 bills, and then what they said is get a receipt, bring the receipt back to the office, and we will replenish the cash. And Vince wrote that off as marketing, and it really was.
Sure, it was.
But oh my gosh, I said, I'm going to have heat. I'm going to be one of the hottest heels you've ever had, probably in the dressing room too.
Well, like I've heard that $1 Million Man was the character Vince wanted to play if he were a wrestler himself.
Well, I'm the one that said that. I said if Vince could have ever been a character in his own show, that's who he'd have been.
That's what it would have been.
Yeah,
now,
for sure.
Would he tell you what the character was going to be before you signed, or was that kept a secret?
Well, no, it was kept a secret, and he told me, he said, Ted, he said, I know this may be hard for you, but he says you're going to have to trust me. Number one, this is if you don't sign the contract, if you don't come with me, if I don't have you on paper, then I can't tell you what it is because it's something that's never been done before. And I don't want to take the chance of you saying no and then take my idea and go do it somewhere else.
That's right.
And so, he says, but I promise you, when you sign, you'll see.
You go.
And of course, I signed. I remember I got on a phone call with Terry Funk, who was a great friend of mine, the whole Funk family.
Oh yeah.
And I always went to him for advice. And he said, Teddy, he said, if Vince McMahon says he's got an original idea and you're the guy for the job, take it and don't look back.
Oh.
And so I went back to Vince and signed the contract. And I said, okay, what is it? And when he laid it out there, I was like, you're kidding. You're going to pay me to do this?
Oh, it's great.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable.
What's funny about the character and him giving you the cash and all that, it's like a portrayal of, you know, what some of these other wrestlers kind of did with their own money. I always hear Ric Flair talk about he went broke because he was trying to be that character with his own money. And they were giving you the money.
Okay. I'm glad you said that because Rick and I are buddies. And Rick always likes to be the center of attention. He'll go in the bar and he'll put up, you know, and he says, around for the house.
Yes.
On Ric Flair. And so I said, Rick and I were pretty good friends. I said, you know the biggest difference between me and you, Rick? And he said, what's that? I said, you're spending your money. I'm spending Vince's money.
To do the same thing.
I get it back.
Oh, that is hilarious. Where would you hide the $100 bills that you shoved in people's mouth and stuff after you've beat them?
Well, no. When I saw, because Virgil, like my valet, he was always at ringside with me, you know, and so he would, he held on to the cash. And Virgil back then was, you know, he was all muscled up and he had that look about him, like, you don't want to mess with me. And so he held on to the cash while I was wrestling, and if I needed something, and then that's the other thing is like, right there at the beginning, I would pick somebody out of the crowd, and I would say, everybody's got a price for the $1 million man. It's just, and I'm going to prove it again tonight. Who would like an opportunity? I got something, an opportunity for you to make some money, and all the hands go up. I said, look at there. Yeah. I mean, everybody. And so I would pick somebody out of the crowd, and I would ask to have them do stupid stuff like, I might be chewing gum, and I'd spit the gum on the mat, and I would tell that guy, I said, now push that gum all the way across the mat to the other side with your nose.
Yeah.
And they would do it.
Well,
and I
sure.
said, see, everybody's got a price for the $1 million man. And so, then I would say Virgil, and he would pop out the hundreds. And so one night we were in LA, and Gene Hackman, the actor.
Oh yeah.
He was at ringside with I think it was with his grandchildren. Or I think it had to be his grandchildren. And so I spotted him, and I jumped out on the floor, and I went over to Virgil, like clapped my hands together, and I said, and he gives me $100 bill. And I rolled the $100 bill up, and I put it in Gene Hackman's your top pocket, right?
Sure.
And, of his shirt, and I said, have a drink tonight on the $1 million man. I got back in the ring. So after the show, he comes back to the dressing room to meet all the boys, and he said that was really good. He handed me the $100 bill back. I went, no, I meant it, Mr. Hackman. I said, you don't have to pay me back. They're going to pay me back.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so I'll get it back. So it was good.
He's still around. I saw a picture of him the other day. Still around. Phenomenal actor.
Gosh, yeah. I like all his movies.
Was it ever discussed, Jake the Snake, you doing stuff with him or with the snakes or what? How was that handled? I did some, I think I actually wrestled Jake at, I think it was WrestleMania 6. Yeah, I knew you did, but you didn't get bit.
I didn't get bit, and I didn't, and what it was is, it's like, when we got down, he gets the snake, and and I'm sneak, he's backing me into a corner. And so Virgil always tries to come in and help me. And so Virgil comes in from behind, and just before Virgil gets there, Jake turns around and puts the snake on Virgil. And Virgil goes all the way to the mat with this big boa constrictor. Now, I'm going to tell you, and I don't know if I'd have been much different either. Virgil was scared to death of that snake. When he hit the ground, he launched that snake into the air. And I mean, it went right out of the ring onto the floor.
What is it? I mean, we have discussed on this show numerous times with a friend of mine that he's into this too. And you can't recapture the things that you guys did for some reason. It's the golden era, and you just cannot replicate it.
Well, and I think what it is a lot of the guys, including myself, that came into the WWF between the mid '80s and the mid '90s, we came up in wrestling in the old school fashion.
Yep.
And the old school way was you just got in the ring every night, and you if you were a beginner, you'd be with somebody that could lead you and help you that way, and you learned the trade. And you learned it by experience. It's like, and I found out quickly, crowds aren't all the same. And you do something one night and you get a great response, and you do it the next night and they're sitting on their hands. Well, when that happens, then you got to have the ability to think on your feet and change and shift gears and go a different direction.
That's true.
And so I think that's the biggest difference, because WWE, as they are now, they have a tremendous training facility down in Orlando, and they can train those guys, and they can teach them all the stuff and the work, and they have I think they have one live show open to the public a week, and that's okay, but it's still not in the ring every night, and that's really where we learned it. I'll go to my deathbed believing that, because today it's hard for me to watch it now, because it's I see a bunch of guys out there that they're doing a lot of great bumps and flips and flops and woo, but that's it. And they bounce up like nothing happened. It's like what we tried to do is take something. It's like we all know when you walk into a movie theater, it's not real. It's a show.
Right.
But if the actors are really good, they're able to draw you into the story they're telling. Well, that was the same thing with wrestling once upon a time. If the two guys in the ring could actually, because I've heard people say it, man, those first couple matches were fake, but those two guys in the last match, they were trying to kill each other. Well, no, they weren't. They were just very good at what they did and at telling the story. And that's the real art of what we do.
Ted, it's interesting you compare it to watching a movie. What are your thoughts when you watch something like, and it's a great movie, Mickey Rourke, the wrestler? I know there are some guys from your era that kind of experienced that when the heyday was over. God bless them. What were your thoughts sitting there watching it? I'm just thinking that probably hit you in a different way than it would a guy like me that's just a fan.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was a good try, and there was a lot of aspects of the portrayal that he had that were true about wrestling and the wrestling, but just the overall the wrestling itself, they could have found somebody better. Somebody else to work with him, I guess.
Sure, to sell that part of it a little more.
Yeah.
Did you wrestle or deal with the Von Erichs at all? Because they've had this movie, fairly recently, the Iron Claw thing.
Yeah.
What's your memories of those guys?
Well, it's funny, I went to West Texas State, which is up in the Panhandle, and that was the Amarillo territory, which was run by the Funk family. And of course, Texas is a big state, so you got a whole other territory that's stationed in Dallas, and that were the Von Erichs, and I knew the boys, the older boys. I don't think I ever met the youngest son. I wrestled David, and I wrestled Kerry a few times, but I never wrestled the Dallas territory because I'd never heard anything good about it. And the other thing would be that Prince Von Erich basically forced his kids into the business.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, you're going to be a wrestler. And what if I didn't want to be a wrestler? Well, what if one of those guys wanted to? It's that's not for him to decide. And so that I heard is pretty brutal. And I've heard stories that Prince was kind of a maniac. So
wow, it's sad, and the whole thing just ends tragically. Go down that road.
Yeah, it does.
It has been so good to talk to you. I mean, we've talked wrestling so many times, and you're our first superstar wrestler to be on the show, and it's just such an honor. Everybody's going to have the chance to meet you today at the car show. When's the last time you were in Arkansas?
Oh gosh, it's been a while, but I mean, Little Rock was one of my favorite stops. I always had good response from the crowd, and I mean, when I was a good guy, they loved me, and when I was a bad guy, they really hated me.
Well,
but it was always a good experience, and I actually, I've got a very good friend. His name is John Williamson, and he and I are good friends, and we're brothers in Christ. I'm a former wrestler, but I'm an ordained minister. And John Williamson played for the Arkansas Razorbacks.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
He was a good guy.
Do you still have the $1 million belt?
Well, I have a replica. Of the belt. The real belt is when they made that belt in 1988 when it was made. Its estimated value was $40,000.
Woo.
Because all of the stones in the belt are what they call cubic zirconium. And I didn't know what that was. And my wife goes, it means it's almost a diamond. And so there was like 700 of those stones in the face of the belt. And then what was really funny is that on the back of the belt, there's these 3 little diamonds that nobody could see. And I asked somebody, I said, when I got the belt, I said, okay, I understand all these things that everybody can see. Well, what's this? And they looked at me and they said, you're going to love this. They said, Ted, those are real diamonds. I said, why? He says, if anybody ever asks you, are the diamonds in the belt real? You can answer yes without lying.
Oh, that's genius. Well, it should be in the Smithsonian. That's what I'm thinking. Hey, Ted, thank you for being on the show. I want everybody to come out and meet you today at Mopar Mania. It's a big car show. It's at the MacArthur Church in Jacksonville. That's 3501 John Hardin Drive. And I don't want to give anybody the impression they're going to show up and it's just all of it's free. So the photos comes with an 8x10, correct? If you buy that, it's 40.
I think the autograph pictures are 40. And if you just get a selfie, that would be 40. But the combo is the best deal. You get the autograph picture and a picture with me for 60. That's the combo.
That's the deal to go for. And you're going to be doing this from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Mopar Mania today in Jacksonville at the MacArthur Church. So you guys head over there and meet a WWF superstar. That is so fantastic to talk to you, and I hope to get out there and meet you myself here in just a little while.
All right, Wayne. Listen, I got one more thing to say to all you fans. Always remember this. Everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.